Maya Alvarez felt time slow to an excruciating crawl as hot coffee erupted from the cup, arcing through the air in a terrible brown cascade. Her body froze, but her mind raced with crystal clarity, watching helplessly as the dark liquid splashed across the pristine white shirt and custom charcoal suit of the man seated at table 7. Not just any man. Alexander Reed. Tech visionary. Venture capital kingmaker. 38 years old and worth an estimated $17.2 billion. And she had just drenched him in Colombian dark roast. The elegant chatter of Le Ciel, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, evaporated instantly. Silverware clattered to plates. Champagne flutes paused mid-toast. 63 pairs of eyes. Maya had counted the reservations herself while working the morning shift, swiveled simultaneously to witness her catastrophe in high definition. Maya began, but the words strangled in her throat. Her hands trembled violently as she fumbled for the napkins tucked into her apron pocket. Too little, too late. Coffee dripped from Reed's custom-tailored sleeve onto the white tablecloth, forming an ever-expanding Rorschach of her impending unemployment. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not today. Not after everything. 12 hours earlier, Maya had been awakened by her phone's harsh buzz at 4:37 a.m. The hospital calling again. Her mother's condition had worsened overnight. The experimental treatment they'd been counting on, the one Maya had been working double shifts for 6 months to afford, wasn't responding as hoped. The doctor's voice was professionally detached, but Maya had become fluent in medical euphemisms. "We should discuss alternative options," meant they were running out of time. She'd held her mother's frail hand until sunrise, memorizing the pattern of blue veins beneath paper-thin skin, before rushing to her first shift at the diner on 9th Avenue. From there, she'd gone straight to Le Ciel, where she'd been for only 3 weeks, a probationary server in the most ruthlessly prestigious restaurant in the city. The kind of place where a single generous tip could cover a week's worth of hospital parking fees. The kind of place where mistakes were neither tolerated nor forgotten. Her manager, Philippe, had warned the staff just that morning. Reed's table is priority absolute. Everything must be flawless. His French accent thickened whenever he was stressed, and it had been practically impenetrable during the pre-shift meeting. He is considering Le Ciel for exclusive catering of his company's global product launch next month. A contract worth millions. Maya had nodded along with everyone else, desperately fighting the exhaustion that blurred the edges of her vision. 62 hours this week already. Just make it through dinner service, she'd told herself. Just this one last shift. She'd been managing fine, taking orders, delivering exquisite plates of food worth more than what she made in a day, until the espresso machine had malfunctioned, backing up the dessert orders. The kitchen had erupted in controlled chaos. Chef Marceau was shouting. Line cooks were scrambling. And Philippe had fixed Maya with a withering stare. Table 7 is waiting for coffee. She'd done everything right. Ground the beans herself. Monitored the extraction time. Selected the hand-painted porcelain demitasse from Sèvres that Philippe insisted complemented the chocolate soufflé. Placed it carefully on the silver tray. Everything right, until Tomas, the food runner, had rounded the corner with a tower of plates just as Maya had stepped from behind the service station. The collision was inevitable. Physics, cruel and simple. And now, as coffee continued to drip from Alexander Reed's ruined cuff, Maya saw her entire life collapsing alongside her dignity. Her job gone. References destroyed. Her mother's treatment, their rent-controlled apartment she was already behind on, her younger brother's college application fees, all of it, evaporating with each passing millisecond of terrible silence. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reed," she finally managed, her voice hardly a whisper. Across the restaurant, Philippe's face had transformed into a mask of pure horror. 2 busboys stood frozen near the kitchen door, wide-eyed and grateful for their invisibility. At the neighboring table, an older woman in diamonds actually gasped, her hand flying to her pearls in a gesture Maya would have found comically theatrical under any other circumstances. But it was Reed's dining companion, a sharp-featured woman in a sleek designer dress, who broke the silence first. For God's sake, Alexander, she hissed, sliding her chair back to avoid the spreading stain. This is precisely why I told you we should have gone to 11 Madison. The staff here is clearly. Reed held up one hand, silencing her instantly. His expression remained unreadable as he slowly looked down at his ruined suit, a suit that probably cost more than Maya's annual income, then back up at her trembling form. Maya braced herself. She'd heard the stories about powerful men like Reed. How they destroyed careers with a single phone call. How they demanded not just apologies but ritual humiliation. In her 3 weeks at Lucille, she'd witnessed customers reduce servers to tears over infinitely smaller offenses, a slightly delayed appetizer, a wine served 2 degrees too warm. What would Reed do? Demand she be fired on the spot? Call the restaurant owner? Perhaps he'd simply walk out, taking his millions in potential business with him, ensuring that every person on staff remembered her as the woman who cost them their holiday bonuses. Alexander Reed dabbed at his wrist with a napkin, his movements deliberate. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet that Maya had to lean forward slightly to hear him. When I was 19, he said, I worked the overnight shift at a gas station outside of Pittsburgh to pay my way through community college. Maya blinked, uncertain if she'd heard him correctly. One night, Reed continued, his voice still calm, almost conversational, I fell asleep on my feet. Hadn't slept in maybe 30 hours? Between classes and the job. He glanced up at Maya, his eyes searching her face. I spilled an entire pot of coffee on my manager. Gave him second-degree burns on his arm. The restaurant remained eerily silent. Even the kitchen noises had ceased, as if the entire building was holding its breath. He fired me, of course, Reed said, a faint smile touching the corner of his mouth. But first, he asked me a question I never forgot. He paused then. When is the last time you slept? The question hung in the air between them. Maya felt a hot tear escape down her cheek before she could stop it. Last night, she lied automatically, the response trained into her by years of service industry conditioning. Never let them see your weakness. Never make your problems the customer's concern. Reed tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made Maya feel transparent. Try again, he said softly. Something in his tone, not unkind, not demanding, but knowing, broke through Maya's professional facade. I don't remember, she admitted, her voice cracking. 2 days ago. Maybe 3. Reed nodded, as if confirming something to himself. That's what I thought. He reached for another napkin and continued blotting his sleeve with remarkable composure. You have the same look I had back then. I recognize it. Maya became aware that Philippe had materialized at her side, practically vibrating with barely contained panic. Mr. Reed, please accept our most sincere apologies for this unforgivable incident, he began, his accent thick with stress. I assure you, this server will be immediately given a break. Reed finished for him. He looked up at Philippe with an expression that brooked no argument. I'd like her to sit down for 15 minutes, have something to eat, and then return to take our dessert order. He glanced at his companion, whose perfectly sculpted eyebrows had nearly disappeared into her hairline. If that's acceptable to you, Vanessa? The woman, Vanessa, opened her mouth, closed it, then managed a tight smile. Of course, Alexander. Whatever you think best. Philippe looked as though he might faint. But, sir, we have many other servers who could. I'm sure you do, Reed interrupted again, his voice suddenly taking on the steel that had built a tech empire. But I've made my request clear. Then, to Maya's absolute astonishment, Alexander Reed stood up, coffee stains and all, and pulled out an empty chair at their table. Sit, he said to her. Not a command, but an invitation. You look like you're about to collapse. The entire restaurant watched in collective disbelief as Maya Alvarez, shaking and still clutching her empty serving tray like a shield, slowly sank into the offered chair at Billionaire Alexander Reed's table. Now, Reed said, settling back into his own seat, why don't you tell me what's keeping you awake at night? /artifact. I've crafted a dramatic and emotionally charged opening for your story about the coffee spill incident. This first section introduces Maya Alvarez, a struggling server working multiple jobs to support her family and pay for her mother's medical treatment, and Alexander Reed, a billionaire tech mogul whose unexpected reaction to having coffee spilled on him defies everyone's expectations. The narrative establishes the high-stakes environment, Maya's exhaustion and personal struggles, and sets up the surprising moment of compassion from Reed that will drive the rest of the story. I've focused on building tension and creating a vivid scene that captures both the horror of the accident and the unexpected turn of events. Maya sat frozen in the offered chair, certain she was hallucinating from exhaustion. The pristine white tablecloth beneath her trembling hands felt too real, the weight of 63 stairs too heavy on her shoulders. Yet somehow, impossibly, she was sitting at Alexander Reed's table while Philippe retreated to the kitchen, his expression a battlefield of confusion and professional deference. I shouldn't be sitting here, Maya whispered, already half rising. Reed's hand gestured gently downward. Please, stay. Those two simple words carried the quiet authority of someone unaccustomed to being refused. Andre, he called to a passing server. Bring MS? Alvarez, Maya supplied automatically. Maya Alvarez. Bring Ms. Alvarez whatever the kitchen staff is having for their family meal tonight. The server nodded, shooting Maya a look of pure bewilderment before hurrying away. Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails tapped an impatient rhythm against her water glass. Alexander, while this is all very charitable, we were discussing the Singapore expansion before this interruption. Reed's attention, however, remained fixed on Maya. You mentioned your mother's in the hospital? Maya blinked in surprise. Had she said that aloud? No, she couldn't have. Her personal problems were strictly off-limits during service. Then she realized her phone. During the collision, her phone had fallen from her apron pocket, screen lit up with the hospital's number, and her missed call log displayed for anyone to see. Reed had noticed. Reed had understood. Yes, she admitted, seeing no point in denial. Cancer. Pancreatic, stage 4. The experimental treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering. She stopped herself. This billionaire didn't need to hear her life story. I'm sorry about your suit. I can pay for the dry cleaning. The absurdity of her offer hung in the air. They both knew her monthly salary wouldn't cover the cost of his cufflinks. Something shifted in Reed's expression, not pity, which Maya would have hated, but recognition. My father died of pancreatic cancer when I was 22, he said quietly. It was quick. Too quick for experimental anything. He took a sip of water, his gaze momentarily distant. Which trial is she in? The Morgensen protocol or Zhang's immunotherapy? Maya's eyes widened. How do you? I sit on the board at MSK, Reed explained. Cancer research is a particular interest of mine. The Zhang trial, Maya replied. But they're saying it's not showing the response they hoped for. The words felt strange leaving her mouth, discussing her mother's mortality with a stranger whose coffee-stained shirt cost more than her rent. At the neighboring table, the woman with the pearls leaned slightly closer, not even pretending she wasn't eavesdropping. Reed nodded thoughtfully. Zhang's approach is brilliant, but the response rates are highly individualized. Has anyone discussed the Nakamura adjunct therapy? It's showing promising results when combined with Zhang's protocol. Maya shook her head slowly. I don't think so. The doctors mentioned something about alternative options this morning, but... She trailed off, suddenly aware that her personal crisis was playing out in Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. Vanessa cleared her throat dramatically. Alexander, I'm sure Ms. Alvarez's medical situations are very compelling, but we have a Tokyo call in 40 minutes. Reed's expression didn't change, but something hardened behind his eyes. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a sleek metal card case. Maya, I'd like you to call this number tomorrow morning, he said, sliding a business card across the table. Ask for Dr. Helena Chen. Tell her I suggested you discuss your mother's case. Maya stared at the card. It was heavy, minimalist, just a phone number and the Reed Innovation Foundation logo embossed in silver. I can't accept this, she said reflexively, even as her fingers closed around the card. Reed's mouth curved into a small, genuine smile. Not the practiced expression she'd seen in countless magazine covers and news clips, but something more human. You haven't accepted anything yet except a business card and a suggestion. The rest is up to you. Andre returned with a plate of food. The staff meal was pasta puttanesca tonight, setting it before Maya with a bewildered glance between her and Reed. Thank you, Andre, Reed said smoothly. And could you bring me a fresh shirt? I believe Philippe keeps several in his office for emergencies. He turned to Maya.
Eat.
That's not a suggestion. As Maya took a hesitant bite, suddenly aware of her gnawing hunger, the restaurant's atmosphere began to thaw. Conversations resumed, though noticeably quieter than before. Silverware clinked against china again. The moment of collective shock was passing, but something fundamental had changed. Mr. Reed, she began after swallowing. Alexander, he corrected. Alexander, Maya repeated, the familiarity feeling strange on her tongue. Why are you doing this? He considered her question for a moment, absently running a finger along the coffee stains spreading across his shirt front. Because 17 years ago, someone should have asked me when I last slept, he said finally. Because success isn't just about talent or hard work, it's also about who notices when you're drowning. He glanced around the restaurant, his gaze sweeping over the other diners who quickly averted their eyes. And because I'm tired of people treating service workers like they're invisible until they make a mistake, then suddenly they're the only thing worth seeing. Vanessa exhaled sharply. How refreshingly populist of you, Alexander. Reed ignored her. Finish your dinner, Maya. Then bring us the chocolate souffle I've heard so much about. And some fresh coffee. His eyes crinkled slightly. Though perhaps I'll help you carry it this time. The laughter that bubbled up from Maya's chest caught her completely off guard, a sound so foreign to her recent existence that she almost didn't recognize it as her own. Several nearby diners turned in surprise at the unexpected sound. I'll be more careful, I promise, she said, feeling some of the crushing weight lift from her shoulders. As Andre returned with a crisp white shirt, Reed stood and removed his jacket. Without hesitation or self-consciousness, he began unbuttoning his ruined shirt right there in the dining room. The pearl-wearing woman at the next table audibly gasped. A younger couple by the window took surreptitious photos with their phones. Vanessa closed her eyes in evident exasperation. Alexander, for God's sake, she hissed. But Reed seemed entirely unconcerned as he shrugged off the stained shirt and handed it to Andre. Underneath, he wore a simple white t-shirt, the kind you could buy in a 3-pack at any department store. This small detail, that beneath the bespoke suit, the billionaire wore ordinary cotton, struck Maya as strangely significant. As he donned the fresh shirt, leaving it casually unbuttoned at the collar, Reed glanced around the restaurant. The other diners quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught staring, but Maya saw something calculated in his actions. He had purposely created a spectacle, ensuring that every person in Lucille would remember this night, and would tell others. You're doing this so people will talk about it, Maya realized aloud. About you, about the restaurant. Reed's smile widened slightly as he retook his seat. Smart observation. Yes, people will talk. Did you hear what happened when that server spilled coffee on Alexander Reed? They'll tell the story at dinner parties. They'll post about it online. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. And in every version of the story, Lucille will be mentioned. The best free advertising Philippe could hope for. Maya felt a new kind of admiration forming. This wasn't just spontaneous kindness, it was strategic kindness. Reed had transformed what could have been a PR disaster for both himself and the restaurant into something beneficial for everyone involved. And what about me? She asked boldly, surprising herself. Reed studied her for a moment. What about you, Maya Alvarez? What happens next in your story? The question hung between them, filled with possibilities neither had anticipated when coffee had splashed across fine linen 10 minutes earlier. From the corner of her eye, Maya noticed Philippe hovering anxiously by the kitchen door, watching their interaction with the intensity of a bomb technician defusing an explosive. Several other staff members had gathered nearby, whispering among themselves. I should get back to work, Maya said, reluctantly rising from the chair. Reed nodded. Of course. But remember that card. Tomorrow morning. As Maya stood, something shifted in the restaurant's atmosphere. The other diners, who had been stealing glances throughout the unusual scene, were now watching openly. She could read the expressions on their faces: curiosity, surprise, and something else: reassessment. These people, who would normally look through her as if she were invisible, were seeing her now. Really seeing her. Not just as the server who had made a catastrophic mistake, but as someone Alexander Reed himself had deemed worthy of his time and attention. It was Philippe who approached the table first as Maya stepped away, practically bowing as he addressed Reed. Mr. Reed, please allow me to express once again our deepest apologies for this incident. Your shirt will of course be replaced at our expense, and your entire meal is complimentary this evening. Reed waved away the offer. No need, Philippe. Accidents happen in the best establishments. In fact, he paused, a gleam in his eye, I'd like to discuss that catering contract for next month's product launch. I think Lucille would be perfect. Philippe's eyes widened. We would be honored, Mr. Reed. On one condition, Reed continued, his voice carrying just enough to be heard at the surrounding tables. Maya Alvarez is specifically requested to be part of the service team. Maya, halfway back to the service station, froze. Philippe's smile became slightly fixed. Of course, Mr. Reed. If that is your wish. It is, Reed confirmed, turning to Vanessa with a smile that suggested he knew exactly how much his behavior had disrupted her carefully planned evening. Now, about Singapore? As Maya retreated to the kitchen, she felt the weight of the business card in her pocket like a talisman. The other servers parted before her, their expressions a mix of confusion, envy, and newfound respect. In the span of 15 minutes, everything had changed. Her job was secure. Her mother might have new treatment options. And Alexander Reed, billionaire, tech visionary, tabloid fixture, had transformed from abstract symbol of wealth to complicated human being right before her eyes. In the kitchen, Chef Marceau was waiting, arms crossed. What just happened out there? He demanded, his French accent thick with suspicion. Maya touched the card in her pocket, feeling its sharp edges against her fingertips. I'm not entirely sure, she answered honestly, but I think Mr. Reed just saved my life. Behind her, through the swinging kitchen doors, she could hear the restaurant buzzing with excited conversation. By morning, the story would be everywhere. The billionaire, the coffee, and the server whose mistake had somehow turned into opportunity. Chef Marceau raised an eyebrow. The soufflé for table 7 is ready. Try not to drop this one, we. For the first time in weeks, Maya smiled without forcing it. No promises, chef. But I'll do my best. As she carefully arranged the delicate chocolate soufflé on her tray, Maya glanced through the kitchen window. Reed was deep in conversation with Vanessa now, his coffee-stained jacket hanging casually over the back of his chair, a deliberate choice, she realized, to keep the evidence of the accident visible. The man was playing chess while everyone else played checkers. And somehow, inexplicably, he had moved Maya from pawn to player with a single, coffee-soaked move. The restaurant had transformed into a theater, and every diner was now fully invested in the unfolding drama at table 7. As Maya carefully approached with a chocolate soufflé, she could feel the collective gaze of Lucille's patrons tracking her movement across the dining room. At a corner table, a group of finance executives had abandoned all pretense of their own conversation, their heads swiveled in perfect synchronization. The woman with the pearls at the adjacent table had repositioned her chair for a better view, opera glasses now mysteriously produced from her evening bag. Near the window, a well-known fashion designer whispered urgently to his companion while sketching something on a napkin, perhaps already conceptualizing a coffee-resistant textile for his next collection. Here we are, Maya announced with newfound confidence as she placed the soufflé before Reed. Our signature chocolate soufflé with Tahitian vanilla creme anglaise. It looks perfect, Reed said, his eyes crinkling with genuine appreciation. And you've made it all the way across the dining room without incident. I'd call that progress. Vanessa's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, then at Reed. Tokyo is calling early. I need to take this. Go ahead, Reed nodded. I'm in good hands here. As Vanessa excused herself to the restaurant's entrance foyer, Maya became acutely aware of how this scene appeared to everyone watching. The billionaire, alone with the server who had soaked him in coffee, now seemingly enjoying her company as if they were old friends. At the bar, a woman in a crimson dress nudged her companion and held up her phone. It's already on Twitter, she announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Someone got a picture of him changing his shirt. Her companion leaned over to look. The comments are wild. Reed shows human side after coffee disaster. Billionaire passes basic decency test, internet shocked. Maya felt her cheeks flush. What had been a private moment of crisis was rapidly becoming public spectacle. She began pouring fresh coffee with extra care, hyper-aware of her movements. Don't worry about them, Reed said quietly, noticing her discomfort. People are fascinated by wealth behaving against stereotype. If I'd fired you on the spot, it wouldn't have merited a single tweet. Kindness is apparently more newsworthy than cruelty. Is that why you did it? Maya asked, the question escaping before she could stop herself. For the publicity? Reed considered the question as he lifted his coffee cup. An interesting theory. What do you think? Maya studied him. Despite his casual demeanor, there was something deliberate in how he had orchestrated the entire incident, ensuring maximum visibility, controlling the narrative. I think there might have been easier ways to get good publicity, she said finally. This seems personal. A flicker of something, approval, perhaps, crossed Reed's face. Perceptive. Before Maya could respond, she noticed Philippe approaching with an older gentleman, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Mr. Reed, Philippe said, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Mr. Devereaux, the owner of Lucille, wished to personally express his gratitude for your understanding this evening. Reed stood to shake Devereaux's hand. Marcus. It's been too long. Indeed, Alexander, Devereaux replied, his accent unmistakably old money New England. Though I wish we were reconnecting under different circumstances. He glanced at Maya with an unreadable expression. I understand there was an incident. A happy accident, Reed corrected smoothly. Ms. Alvarez here has provided exceptional service, despite working under what I suspect are challenging conditions. He turned to Philippe. Your staff schedules might benefit from revision, Philippe. I noticed Ms. Alvarez has been here since early afternoon, and I happen to know she worked the morning shift elsewhere. Philippe blanched. I wasn't aware. Of course not, Reed interrupted. You wouldn't be. That's rather the point. Devereaux's eyes narrowed slightly as he assessed the situation. We pride ourselves on being an exceptional employer, Alexander. I'm sure you do, Reed replied. And now you have an opportunity to prove it. He gestured toward Maya. Talent like Ms. Alvarez's shouldn't be stretched across multiple jobs just to make ends meet. The implication hung in the air between them. Maya stood frozen, caught in a power negotiation happening over her head but unmistakably about her future. Devereaux cleared his throat. Ms. Alvarez, perhaps we should discuss adjusting your position here at Lucille. Full-time, with appropriate benefits. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. A full-time position at Lucille with benefits would mean health insurance. It would mean not having to work the diner shifts. It would mean sleep. I would appreciate that opportunity, Mr. Devereaux, she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. From nearby tables, Maya could hear the unmistakable sounds of phones recording video. Tomorrow, this exchange would be dissected across social media, analyzed by strangers who had never set foot in Lucille but would nonetheless have opinions about everyone involved. Reed seemed to sense her unease. Perhaps this conversation could continue in more private surroundings, he suggested. Of course, Devereaux agreed. Ms. Alvarez, my office. Tomorrow at 10? Yes, sir. Thank you. As Devereaux departed with a final meaningful look at Philippe, Reed retook his seat. Eat your soufflé before it falls, he advised, pushing his untouched dessert toward Maya. Chef Marceau's creation shouldn't go to waste. I couldn't, Maya began. Consider it a celebration, Reed insisted. You've just secured a full-time position with benefits at one of New York's most prestigious restaurants. Maya hesitated, then took the offered spoon. As she savored the first bite of the delicate chocolate confection, a dessert she had served countless times but never tasted, she became aware of a shift in the dining room's atmosphere. The young couple by the window, who had been surreptitiously recording earlier, now approached their table with tentative steps. "Excuse me, Mr. Reed," the woman said, her voice quavering slightly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but what you did tonight was really amazing." Reed looked up, his expression neutral. "Thank you, but I'm not sure what you mean." Standing up for her, the woman clarified, gesturing toward Maya. "My mom was a waitress for 20 years. The stories she would tell about how people treated her." She trailed off, emotion evident in her voice. Her partner nodded in agreement. "Most people with your kind of money would have gone ballistic over a spilled coffee." Reed considered them for a moment. "What are your names?" "Emily," the woman answered. "And this is my husband, David." "Emily and David," Reed repeated. "Tell me, what do you do?" David straightened slightly. "I'm developing an app for sustainable urban farming." Emily's in graduate school for environmental engineering. Interest flickered across Reed's face. "Urban farming? I'd like to hear more about that sometime." He reached into his pocket and produced another business card. "Email my office. We have a green technology incubator that might interest you." The couple's eyes widened in perfect synchronicity. "Really? That would be incredible," David stammered. "No promises," Reed cautioned. "But I'm always interested in sustainable solutions." As the couple retreated to their table, visibly stunned by the unexpected connection, Maya noticed a ripple effect spreading through the restaurant. Other diners were now watching with calculated interest, reassessing the man at table 7. Not just as Alexander Reed, billionaire, but as someone who might be a potential ally, investor, or connection. "That happens often, doesn't it?" Maya observed. "People approaching you, hoping for something." Reed's mouth curved into a small smile. "Constantly. Though usually with more pretense and less honesty." At a nearby table, a group of young professionals had huddled over their phones, speaking in excited whispers. One of them gestured toward Reed while scrolling through what appeared to be a news site. Reed Innovations just announced a partnership with Memorial Sloan Kettering. The young man reported to his companions, loud enough to be overheard. A $50 million commitment to pancreatic cancer research. The press release went out 20 minutes ago. Maya nearly dropped her spoon. 20 minutes ago? But that's coincidental timing, Reed said smoothly, though his eyes held a knowing glint. Maya stared at him, understanding dawning. "You planned this. All of it." "I made a phone call during my shirt change," Reed acknowledged. "The announcement was scheduled for next week, but some timelines are flexible." The implications swirled through Maya's mind. "So when you mentioned Dr. Chin and the Nakamura protocol?" "The funding was already allocated," Reed confirmed. "But your mother's case might benefit from expedited access." The restaurant had transformed again. What had begun as a scene of embarrassment and potential career disaster was now something else entirely, a nexus of opportunity, connection, and unexpected kindness playing out before a live audience of New York's elite. At the bar, the woman in the crimson dress was now openly filming. "This is going viral," she announced to no one in particular. "The Reed Foundation just dropped major cancer research funding right after he defended a server who spilled coffee on him. It's like a movie." An older gentleman at a window table raised his wine glass toward Reed in a silent toast. Reed acknowledged him with a slight nod, the exchange carrying layers of meaning Maya couldn't decipher. Vanessa returned from her call, looking irritated. "Tokyo wants to reschedule. Apparently there's been a..." She paused, noticing the charged atmosphere in the restaurant. "What did I miss?" "A transformation," Reed replied simply. He checked his watch. "Maya, what time does your shift end?" "Midnight, Sir Alexander," she corrected herself. Reed nodded. "And the hospital's visiting hours?" "They make exceptions for immediate family," Maya explained. "I can see my mother whenever I can get there." "Good." Reed stood, gathering his still-stained jacket. Philippe, he called, and the manager materialized instantly at his side. Ms. Alvarez will be leaving now. Her pay remains intact, naturally. Philippe's mouth opened and closed several times. But, Mr. Reed, we're short-staffed already and I'm sure you'll manage, Reed interrupted with quiet authority. Family emergencies take precedence, wouldn't you agree? The manager's internal struggle played out visibly across his face before he conceded. Of course, Mr. Reed. He turned to Maya. You may collect your things, Ms. Alvarez. The restaurant had gone completely silent again, all pretense of private conversations abandoned as everyone watched this final act unfold. I'll have my driver take you to the hospital, Reed said to Maya. And tomorrow, remember, Dr. Chun, 9 a.m. Maya stood there, overwhelmed by the rapid reconfiguration of her reality. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, Reed advised. Thank me when your mother's treatment shows results. Thank me when you've had a full night's sleep. Thank me when you don't have to choose between paying rent and paying medical bills. He extended his hand, and Maya took it automatically. Instead of shaking it, Reed clasped her hand between both of his, a gesture somewhere between professional and paternal. Sometimes coffee spills lead to unexpected connections, Ms. Alvarez, he said, his voice pitched just loud enough to carry to the nearest tables. I look forward to seeing where this one leads. As Reed released her hand and turned to Vanessa, Maya became aware of dozens of eyes tracking her movement toward the staff room. The other diners, CEOs, celebrities, influencers, old money and new, watched her with newfound interest and, in some cases, a calculating reassessment. In the space of one evening, she had been transformed from invisible server to a character in New York's ongoing social drama. The woman who spilled coffee on Alexander Reed and somehow ended up with a better life because of it. In the staff room, her phone was already lighting up with notifications. Texts from co-workers at the diner. News alerts mentioning Reed innovations and cancer research. And, most surprisingly, a LinkedIn request from Marcus Devereaux himself. Outside, she could see a sleek black car pulling up to the curb, Reed's driver, waiting to take her to her mother. To tell her about experimental treatments and unexpected angels disguised as coffee-stained billionaires. As Maya changed out of her uniform, she could hear the conversation in the dining room resuming, louder than before. Reed's story, her story, was already being retold, embellished, and spread. By morning, it would be everywhere. Did you hear what happened at Lucille last night? They would ask each other. About the server and the billionaire? And each retelling would carry the same message, that sometimes, in a world where wealth and status typically insulated the powerful from the struggles of ordinary people, one man had chosen to see someone drowning and extend his hand. As Maya stepped back into the dining room, now in her street clothes, a strange thing happened. A woman at a corner table, a famous actress Maya recognized from magazine covers, caught her eye and nodded slightly, a gesture of respect from one working woman to another. One by one, other diners acknowledged her as she made her way to the exit. Small nods, brief smiles, silent recognition of her sudden visibility in their world. At table 7, Reed was deep in conversation with Vanessa, but he paused as Maya passed, offering a final reassurance. My driver has the hospital address. Everything will be arranged. Thank you, Maya said simply, knowing no words could adequately express what his intervention meant. As she pushed through Lucille's heavy glass doors into the cool night air, Maya heard the distinct sound of applause beginning behind her. Soft at first, then building, not for Reed, she realized with shock, but for her. The woman who had spilled coffee on a billionaire and, against all odds, found herself applauded for it. The interior of Alexander Reed's car was another world entirely, hushed, climate-controlled perfection that smelled of fine leather and subtle cologne. As the vehicle glided away from Lucille, Maya felt the surreal disconnect between the life she had been living hours ago and whatever this new reality was becoming. Memorial Sloan Kettering, please, James, Reed instructed his driver, before raising the privacy partition. Maya had expected him to stay behind with Vanessa, to return to his business discussions and billion-dollar decisions. His presence beside her in the back seat of the Maybach was yet another surprise and an evening overflowing with them. "You didn't have to come with me," she said, clutching her bag on her lap like a shield. "I know." Reed loosened his tie slightly. In the dim light of the car's interior, with his coffee-stained jacket and slightly rumpled appearance, he looked less like a tech mogul and more like an ordinary, tired businessman. But there are things that should be said away from an audience. Maya tensed. Here it was, the catch, the quid pro quo, the true cost of his intervention. Despite everything, she had been waiting for this moment, when the other shoe would drop. Reed must have read her expression, because he shook his head slightly. "Not like that," he said. "I meant that what happened tonight wasn't entirely spontaneous on my part, and you deserve to understand why." The car moved smoothly through Manhattan traffic, the outside world reduced to streaks of light and color beyond the tinted windows. "My father was a line cook," Reed began, his gaze directed somewhere beyond the present moment. "He worked 60-hour weeks in a diner outside Pittsburgh, came home with burns up his arms and feet that never stopped hurting. My mother cleaned hotel rooms during the day and offices at night. I rarely saw either of them awake at the same time." Maya listened, trying to reconcile this origin story with the man whose net worth could fund small nations. "The summer I turned 11, my father collapsed in the kitchen during the lunch rush. Pancreatic cancer, already stage 4 by the time they found it." Reed's voice remained steady, matter of fact. He'd been ignoring the symptoms for months. Couldn't afford the time off, couldn't afford the medical bills. By the time he got treatment, it was too late. "I'm sorry," Maya said softly. Reed acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod. "My mother had to work even more hours after he died. I practically raised myself. Started working at 14, lying about my age to get hired at fast food places, gas stations, wherever would take me." The car slowed for a red light, momentarily illuminating Reed's profile in harsh neon. "The story I told you at the restaurant about spilling coffee on my manager, that was true. I was working night shifts, taking community college classes during the day, and running on maybe 3 hours of sleep. The manager fired me on the spot. No questions about why I was falling asleep standing up, no concern about my circumstances." His mouth tightened briefly. "I lost my apartment the following week. Spent 2 months sleeping in my car until I found another job." Maya felt a chill despite the car's perfect temperature. The parallels were too clear to miss. "When I saw you tonight, with those shadows under your eyes, the way your hands were shaking even before the coffee spilled." Reed turned to look directly at her. "I recognized myself 20 years ago. The difference is no one intervened for me." "So this is what then?" Maya asked. "Paying it forward?" Reed considered the question.
"Partly.
"But it's also selfish." "Selfish." Maya couldn't hide her surprise. "I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes," Reed said simply. "What I lack is the ability to change the past. I can't go back and save my father. I can't undo those months I spent homeless. But sometimes," he paused, "sometimes the universe gives you a chance to rewrite someone else's story." The car turned onto the street where Memorial Sloan Kettering's main entrance waited, illuminated and imposing against the night sky. "Tonight wasn't just about you, Maya," Reed continued. "It was about me at 19, exhausted and desperate. It was about my father, who might still be alive if someone had noticed him drowning before it was too late."
His voice softened.
"And yes, it was also about making a point to those 63 people watching in Lucille, people with the power to make similar interventions in others' lives, if they chose to see the opportunity." Maya sat with this revelation, turning it over in her mind. "So, I'm what, a symbol? A teachable moment for the wealthy?" "No." Reed shook his head firmly. "You're Maya Alvarez, a human being with a life and struggles, and a mother who needs better cancer treatment than she's getting. The fact that helping you might inspire others to do the same doesn't diminish the reality of your situation." The car pulled to a smooth stop at the hospital entrance. Through the window, Maya could see the familiar sliding door she had passed through countless times, always with a growing knot of dread in her stomach. "What happens now?" she asked, her hand on the door handle. Now we go talk to your mother's doctors, Reed said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for a billionaire to involve himself in a stranger's medical care at nearly midnight. I've already texted Dr. Chen. She's waiting for us. Maya stared at him. At this hour? Reed's smile held a hint of self-awareness. One advantage of extreme wealth is that it tends to rearrange other people's schedules. As they stepped out of the car, the reality of her situation hit Maya anew. Just hours ago, she had been an anonymous server struggling to keep her head above water. Now she was walking into a hospital alongside one of the world's richest men, about to discuss experimental treatments that might save her mother's life. Why me? She asked suddenly, stopping on the sidewalk. There are millions of people struggling, thousands of cancer patients who need help. What made me different? Reed paused, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved. The coffee, he said finally, with unexpected humor in his voice. The universe has a strange way of arranging collisions between people who need to meet. Sometimes literally. Despite everything, Maya found herself laughing, a genuine, unguarded sound that felt foreign after months of constant stress. So, if I hadn't spilled that coffee, who knows? Reed shrugged. Maybe I would have spilled mine on you instead. Some connections are inevitable. Inside the hospital's gleaming lobby, the night shift receptionist's eyes widened as she recognized Reed. Without a word, she reached for her phone, and within moments, a distinguished woman in a lab coat appeared from an elevator. Alexander, she greeted Reed warmly. When you said urgent, I didn't expect quite this hour. Helena, Reed nodded. Thank you for accommodating us. This is Maya Alvarez. Her mother, Elena Alvarez, is a patient in the Zhang trial. Dr. Chen turned to Maya with new interest. Alvarez, yes, I'm familiar with the case. Stage 4 pancreatic, with limited response to the immunotherapy protocol. Is there anything that can be done? Maya asked, the familiar desperation creeping back into her voice despite the evening's extraordinary turn of events. Dr. Chen glanced at Reed, something unspoken passing between them. Let's go to my office and discuss the options. The Nakamura adjunct therapy I mentioned to Alexander earlier today shows particular promise for cases like your mother's. As they walked toward the elevator, Maya felt a surreal disconnect. The hospital corridors she had walked hundreds of times now felt different, no longer a labyrinth of dead ends and diminishing hope, but a place where possibilities might still exist. In Dr. Chen's office, surrounded by medical journals and framed credentials, Maya listened as the doctor explained the Nakamura protocol in detail, an experimental combination therapy that enhanced the body's response to immunotherapy treatments like the one her mother was already receiving. The trial has shown a 37% improvement in response rates when combined with the Zhang protocol, Dr. Chen explained, pulling up charts on her computer. But it's still experimental and unfortunately not covered by standard insurance. Maya's heart sank. Back to the same old barrier, money. The Reed Foundation will cover all costs associated with Elena Alvarez's treatment, Reed stated, as casually as if offering to pay for coffee. And will establish a compassionate use program for other patients in similar circumstances. Dr. Chen nodded, unsurprised. I'll have the paperwork prepared for tomorrow. We can begin the adjunct therapy as early as next week, pending some additional tests. Maya sat stunned, trying to process what was happening. Just like that? You can just decide to save people? Reed's expression turned contemplative. It's never just like that. These treatments take years of research, brilliant minds like Dr. Chen's, infrastructure, clinical trials. What money can do is remove artificial barriers. It can't guarantee outcomes, but it can guarantee opportunities. Dr. Chen stood. I'd like to check on your mother now, Ms. Alvarez. She was resting comfortably when I saw her earlier, but I want to review her latest labs before we proceed. As the doctor left, Maya found herself alone with Reed again, the weight of everything that had transpired in the last few hours settling around them. I don't know how to process any of this, she admitted. This morning I was just trying to figure out how to pay the electric bill, and now you have breathing room, Reed said simply. Space to focus on what matters, your mother's recovery, your own well-being. Maya studied him, still searching for the catch, the hidden agenda. And what do you get out of all this? Really? Reed considered the question thoughtfully. Perspective, he said finally. It's easy to become detached when you live in the rarefied air that I do. Easy to forget what real struggle looks like. Tonight was grounding. He glanced at his watch, a surprisingly modest timepiece for a man of his wealth. I should go. You need time with your mother, and I have a Singapore expansion to salvage with Vanessa, who is undoubtedly plotting my social demise as we speak. Will I see you again? Maya asked, surprised by how much she wanted the answer to be yes. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Reed replied without hesitation. I'd like to meet your mother if that's all right. And we should discuss your brother's college applications. I know some people at admissions offices who might be helpful. Maya shook her head in wonder. You don't even know him. You don't really know me. I know enough, Reed said. I know you've been working multiple jobs to support your family through an impossible situation. I know you haven't given up despite exhaustion and overwhelming odds. A small smile touched his lips. And I know you make a spectacular mess when you spill coffee. The unexpected joke broke the tension, and Maya found herself laughing again. The second time in one night after months, without humor. Thank you, she said simply, knowing the words were inadequate, but having nothing better to offer. Reed nodded once, accepting the sentiment. Get some rest, Maya. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. As he turned to leave, Maya called after him. Alexander? He paused, looking back. Your coffee stained, she said. It's going to set if you don't treat it soon. A genuine smile spread across his face. Some marks are worth keeping, he replied. Reminders of important moments. After Reed had gone, Maya made her way to her mother's room. Elena Alvarez lay sleeping, thin and pale against the hospital sheets, but peaceful. Maya took her usual seat in the chair beside the bed, but for the first time in months, she didn't feel the crushing weight of helplessness pressing down on her. She took out her phone and saw dozens of notifications, messages from coworkers, news alerts about Reed Innovations' cancer research funding, and most surprisingly, an email from Marcus Devereaux confirming their meeting tomorrow. As she scrolled through, a news headline caught her eye. Coffee catastrophe turns catalyst. Reed announces $50 million for cancer research after servers spill. Below was a photo taken inside Lucille, Reed at the table, Maya sitting across from him, both illuminated in the restaurant's soft lighting. The caption read, "A chance encounter leads to life-changing moment for NYC server and potentially thousands of cancer patients." Maya looked from the phone screen to her sleeping mother, then back again. The woman in that photo, sitting across from a billionaire, apparently engaged in easy conversation, seemed like a stranger. Yet somehow, through a series of extraordinary circumstances, that woman was her. She set her phone aside and took her mother's hand, feeling the fragile pulse beneath paper-thin skin. "Mom," she whispered, though Elena couldn't hear her. "You won't believe what happened tonight. I spilled coffee on a billionaire, and somehow, it might have saved us both." Outside the hospital window, Manhattan glittered with 10,000 lights, each one representing lives unfolding in parallel to her own. Lives that, until tonight, had seemed impossibly distant from hers, separated by walls of privilege and circumstance. But Alexander Reed had shown her that sometimes those walls were more permeable than they appeared. Sometimes all it took was a moment of recognition, of truly seeing another person struggle, to change everything. Tomorrow would bring meetings with hospital administrators, discussions with Lucille's owner, and a return visit from a coffee-stained billionaire with an unexpected capacity for empathy. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new trajectories, new hope. For tonight, though, Maya simply held her mother's hand and allowed herself something she hadn't permitted in months, the luxury of optimism. Artifact type equals text/markdown, ID equals billionaire, coffee, story. Part 5 title equals the life-changing aftermath. Hashtag the life-changing aftermath. 6 months later, the rooftop garden of Reed Innovations' Manhattan headquarters offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, gleaming under a perfect June sky. White-jacketed servers circulated with champagne flutes and canapes among clusters of guests in cocktail attire, their conversations creating a pleasant hum beneath the string quartet playing in the corner. Maya stood at the edge of the gathering, adjusting the lapel of her new suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, tailored specifically for this occasion. In the 6 months since that fateful night at Lucille, she had grown accustomed to better clothes, to being well-rested, to the strange new reality that had unfolded from a spilled cup of coffee. "There she is," called a familiar voice. The woman of the hour. Maya turned to find Alexander Reed approaching, champagne in hand. Unlike their first meeting, his suit today was immaculate, no coffee stains in sight. "Hardly," Maya demurred. "This is your foundation's event." Reed shook his head. "The Alvarez Initiative wouldn't exist without you. This is very much your achievement." The Alvarez Initiative. Even now, seeing the name on the program cards and hearing it spoken aloud felt surreal. What had begun as Reed's personal intervention in one family's medical crisis had evolved into something far more expansive, a multi-million-dollar program providing access to experimental cancer treatments for uninsured and underinsured patients, with a special focus on service industry workers. "How's Elena doing today?" Reed asked, his tone shifting from public to personal. Maya couldn't suppress her smile. "The doctors are using the word remission for the first time. Cautiously, but still, it's more than we ever hoped for." Reed nodded, genuine pleasure warming his features. "And your brother? How's Cornell treating him?" "Loving it. The pre-med curriculum is brutal, but he's determined." Maya shook her head in continued amazement. "He video called last week to tell me he's been accepted into the summer research program you recommended." Before Reed could respond, they were joined by Dr. Chun, elegant in a simple blue dress that contrasted with her usual lab coat. "The Nakamura-Jean combination therapy is showing remarkable results across the board," she reported, her professional demeanor giving way to barely contained excitement. "The Phase 2 trial data exceeded our most optimistic projections. We're looking at a potential 43% improvement in survival rates for pancreatic cancer patients who failed to respond to standard protocols." Reed raised his glass slightly. "That calls for celebration." "Indeed," Dr. Chin agreed. "And the Foundation's commitment to subsidize treatment costs means we'll be able to offer it to patients regardless of insurance status, once FDA approval comes through." Maya felt a familiar tightness in her throat, the emotion that still caught her off guard when she fully comprehended the ripple effects of that night 6 months ago. Hundreds, potentially thousands of cancer patients would now have access to life-saving treatments because she had tripped while carrying coffee. "There you all are," called Vanessa, appearing at Reed's elbow. The sharp-featured woman Maya had met that first night had initially been skeptical of Reed's sudden interest in cancer research funding, but over the months, she had become an unexpected ally, leveraging her considerable business acumen to structure the initiative for maximum impact. "The Times reporter is here for the interview," Vanessa informed them. "And that filmmaker who wants to do the documentary. We should get started soon." Reed checked his watch. "We've got time. Maya hasn't given me the latest update on Lucille." "You'd know better than I would these days," Maya laughed. "You're there more often than I am now." It was true. After her promotion to assistant manager, complete with health insurance and a salary that allowed her to quit the diner job, Maya had found herself increasingly drawn to the administrative side of the restaurant business. Her insider's perspective on working conditions had proven invaluable as she helped Devereaux implement staff welfare improvements across his restaurant group. "Philippe still flinches whenever I order coffee," Reed noted with a hint of mischief. A burst of laughter drew their attention across the rooftop, where Maya's mother was holding court among a group of Reed Foundation board members. Elena Alvarez, once frail and bedbound, now stood straight-backed in a vibrant red dress, her hair regrown into a stylish bob after the ravages of her treatments. "I never thought I'd see her like that again," Maya said softly. Reed followed her gaze. "She's remarkable. The patient advocacy program was entirely her idea, you know. Having former patients mentor those currently undergoing treatment has proven more valuable than any of our technical innovations." A familiar figure detached from the crowd and approached their small group, Chef Marceau from Lucille, his usual stern expression softened for the occasion. Ms. Alvarez, he greeted Maya with a formal nod. Your mother has been telling me about her new supper club for cancer patients. Apparently, my coq au vin recipe has been modified to accommodate various dietary restrictions. He sniffed dramatically. Sacrilege, but for a good cause, I suppose. Maya grinned. Her mother's recovery had unleashed unexpected talents, including a gift for adapting gourmet recipes for people struggling with treatment side effects. What had begun as personal necessity had evolved into a cookbook project, with Chef Marceau reluctantly contributing his expertise. The cookbook proceeds will support the initiative, Maya reminded him. Your grandmother's secret recipes are funding cancer research. She would approve, Marceau conceded, a rare smile briefly illuminating his austere features. As the chef moved away to supervise the catering staff, a team that included 2 former patients now in remission, Maya found herself momentarily overwhelmed by the improbability of the scene before her. 6 months ago, she had been invisible to these people, a server to be noticed only when something went wrong. Now she stood among them as a colleague, a partner, a catalyst. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? Reed observed quietly, reading her expression. Sometimes I still wake up thinking it was all a dream, Maya admitted. That I'll find myself back at the diner, working double shifts, watching my mother slip away. Reed nodded in understanding. Reality shifts can be disorienting, even positive ones. Ladies and gentlemen, called Vanessa, who had taken position near the podium set up for the evening's presentations. If you could please take your seats, we're ready to begin the formal program. As the crowd began to migrate toward the arranged seating, Reed held Maya back with a light touch on her arm. Before we go up there, he said, his voice pitched for her ears alone, I wanted to give you something. From his jacket pocket, he withdrew a small box wrapped in simple silver paper. Maya accepted it with surprise. What's this for? 6-month anniversary, Reed replied. Of the coffee incident. Maya unwrapped the package carefully to reveal a velvet jewelry box. Inside, nestled against dark fabric, lay a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a coffee cup. Turn it over, Reed instructed. On the back, tiny engraved letters spelled out, some collisions change trajectories forever. It's perfect, Maya said, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Thank you. Reed's smile held a hint of his now familiar wry humor. I thought about having it made from the actual fabric of my ruined shirt, but that seemed a bit much. Definitely too much, Maya agreed with a laugh. Though it would have made a better story for the documentary. As they made their way toward the podium, Maya spotted familiar faces throughout the crowd. Philippe from Lucille, still slightly nervous in Reed's presence. The young couple from the restaurant that night, Emily and David, whose urban farming app had indeed received funding from Reed's green technology incubator. Even the woman with the pearls who had gasped so dramatically when coffee had spilled was present, now a significant donor to the Alvarez initiative. The story of that night had spread far beyond the 63 diners who had witnessed it firsthand. It had been featured in business magazines as an example of spontaneous corporate social responsibility, in medical journals as a case study in innovative research funding, and in human interest pieces across various media platforms. What most of those stories missed, however, was what Maya now understood to be the true significance of that evening, the recognition of shared humanity across socioeconomic divides. Reed's intervention hadn't simply been charity, it had been acknowledgement, seeing another person struggle and having both the means and the will to address it. As Maya took her seat in the front row, her mother reached over to squeeze her hand. Did I ever tell you, Elena whispered, her eyes bright with mischief, that when I was a young woman working in a restaurant in Puerto Rico, I once spilled an entire tray of sangria on a famous baseball player? Maya stared at her mother in disbelief.
What? No.
What happened? Elena's smile widened. He yelled. I cried. I got fired. Not all coffee spills lead to healthcare initiatives. Despite the solemnity of the occasion, Maya found herself suppressing laughter. Her mother's humor, long buried under the weight of illness, had returned alongside her strength. Ms. Alvarez, Vanessa called, gesturing toward the podium. We're ready for you. Maya stood, straightening her suit jacket, an automatic gesture that still felt unfamiliar after years of adjusting server aprons instead. As she approached the microphone, she saw Reed take a seat beside her mother, leaning over to hear something Elena was telling him that made him laugh softly. The crowd quieted as Maya faced them. Cameras flashed. A videographer circled discreetly, capturing footage for the documentary that would tell the story of the Alvarez Initiative. 6 months ago, Maya began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach, I spilled coffee on Alexander Reed at Lucille Restaurant. A ripple of knowing laughter moved through the audience. I thought it was the worst moment of my life, she continued. I was working 3 jobs. My mother was losing her battle with cancer, and I had just destroyed a billionaire's custom suit. She paused, letting the image sink in. What I didn't know then was that sometimes disasters are opportunities in disguise. Sometimes, what looks like the end of the road is actually the beginning of a journey you couldn't have imagined. From the audience, Reed gave her an encouraging nod. The Alvarez Initiative isn't just about providing cancer treatments to those who can't afford them, though that alone would be worthy of celebration. It's about recognizing that economic circumstances shouldn't determine who lives and who dies. It's about seeing the person behind the uniform, behind a name tag, behind the title of server, or housekeeper, or line cook. Maya touched the coffee cup pendant at her throat, drawing strength from its symbolism. My father used to say that character is revealed in moments of crisis. What I've learned is that character is also revealed in moments of power, in how we respond when we have the ability to help or harm. She sought Reed's gaze in the audience. Alexander Reed could have had me fired that night. Instead, he chose to really see me as a human being facing impossible choices. Elena wiped away a tear, her pride evident even from a distance. Today, as we formally launch the Alvarez Initiative, I invite all of you to consider the invisible struggles of those who serve you, drive you, clean for you, cook for you. Consider what it would mean to truly see them, to recognize their humanity as completely as you recognize your own. Maya's voice strengthened with conviction. Because sometimes the most revolutionary act isn't changing the world, it's changing how we see the people already in it. Applause erupted across the rooftop. As Maya stepped back from the podium, she caught Reed's eye. He raised a champagne glass in a subtle toast that acknowledged what they both knew. Their unexpected connection had transformed not just Maya's life, but Reed's as well. The billionaire who had everything had gained something money couldn't buy: purpose, perspective, and a genuine connection to the world beyond his privileged bubble. As the formal program continued, with Reed taking the stage to outline the technical aspects of the initiative, Maya found herself at the rooftop's edge again, looking out over the city. Somewhere below, servers were rushing between tables, hospital workers were changing shifts, line cooks were sweating over hot stoves, all living lives as complex and worthy as her own had been. The difference was that now, because of one coffee spill and the chain reaction it had triggered, some of those lives would be seen, acknowledged, and potentially changed. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her brother. Just heard your speech via live stream. Mom looks amazing. P.S. Cornell Medical School Dean wants to talk to me about a scholarship program for children of service workers. She smiled, typing back. Tell you about it later. Might involve you spilling something on someone important. As she slipped her phone back into her pocket, Maya felt a presence beside her. Vanessa, Reed's sharp-featured colleague, joined her at the railing. You know, Vanessa said conversationally, that night at Lucille, I thought Alexander had lost his mind. All I could see was the coffee stain and the disruption to our schedule. She shook her head ruefully. I completely missed what he saw immediately, an opportunity to make a real difference. We all have different perspectives, Maya offered diplomatically. Vanessa gave her an appraising look. That's generous of you. I wasn't particularly kind that evening. You were focused on business, Maya shrugged. That's your job. It is, Vanessa agreed. But Alexander taught me something important. Sometimes the best business decisions aren't on the spreadsheet. She gestured toward the gathering, where potential donors were already approaching Reed with checkbooks metaphorically open. The Alvarez initiative will likely generate more positive PR and goodwill than our last 3 product launches combined. Maya smiled at the businesswoman's pragmatic assessment. So, it was a good investment after all? Astronomically good, Vanessa confirmed with a hint of admiration. And the Singapore expansion went through last month, despite the coffee delay. She raised her glass. To happy accidents. To happy accidents, Maya echoed, clinking her glass against Vanessa's. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself at the center of a whirlwind of introductions and conversations. Researchers eager to explain their latest findings. Philanthropists interested in expanding the initiative to other cities. Former service workers with their own stories of medical catastrophes and financial ruin. Through it all, she maintained a sense of grounded purpose, remembering the fear and exhaustion that had defined her life just 6 months earlier. That version of Maya Alvarez, the one who had trembled as coffee splashed across Alexander Reed's pristine shirt, seemed simultaneously distant and intimately familiar, a ghost of who she had been, and a reminder of who she might still be without the extraordinary intervention of circumstance. As the formal program concluded and guests began to depart, Maya found a quiet moment with her mother and Reed near the dessert table, where, fittingly, chocolate soufflés identical to those served at Lucille were being offered. Full circle, Reed observed, lifting one of the delicate confections. Though I'll admit I'm a bit nervous about potential spillage. Elena laughed, the sound still a miracle to Maya's ears after so many months of pained silence. Maybe you should wear your coffee-stained suit for protection. Didn't you keep it? Framed in my office, Reed confirmed with mock solemnity. My most expensive yet valuable business attire. Maya shook her head at their easy banter, another unexpected development from the past months. Her mother and Reed had formed an unlikely friendship, bonded initially by their shared cancer experiences, his father, her own battle, and later by a mutual interest in using their respective platforms to help others. The Nakamura-Zhang protocol is being featured in the New England Journal of Medicine next month, Reed informed Elena. Your case study is prominently included, with your permission, of course. Elena nodded, pride evident in her posture. From patient to case study to advocate. A journey I never expected. Speaking of journeys, Maya interjected, I've been meaning to tell you both something. She took a deep breath. I've been accepted to the business program at NYU. Part-time, so I can continue working with the foundation. Her mother's eyes widened in delight. Maya. That's wonderful news. Reed's smile held something deeper. Understanding, perhaps, of the full-circle nature of this development. From serving business executives to becoming one, he observed. Though I hope you'll maintain your unique perspective. That's the plan, Maya confirmed. Someone needs to remind the future C-suite that their decisions affect real people carrying real coffee. As the rooftop emptied and the sunset painted Manhattan in shades of gold and rose, the 3 of them remained, connected by circumstances so unlikely that they would have seemed fictional 6 months earlier. I've been thinking, Reed said as they watched the city lights begin to twinkle on, about expanding the initiative's scope. How so? Maya asked. Beyond medical assistance, he elaborated. Educational opportunities, housing security, childcare support, the other barriers that keep service workers trapped in cycles of exhaustion and financial precarity. Elena nodded thoughtfully. Comprehensive intervention. Addressing the entire ecosystem of need. Exactly, Reed agreed. The coffee spill was just the beginning. There's so much more we could do. Maya fingered the silver coffee cup pendant at her throat, considering the vast distance between her past and present, and the even greater possibilities that lay ahead. Some collisions really do change trajectories forever, she said softly. Around them, Manhattan continued its eternal rhythm, servers rushing between tables, drivers navigating crowded streets, office lights burning late as cleaners moved invisibly through corporate towers. But in that moment, on that rooftop, 3 people from vastly different worlds stood united by a simple truth, that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the smallest accidents. And somewhere in the city below, perhaps at that very moment, another cup of coffee was being spilled, Another potential catalyst waiting to be recognized by someone with the vision to see beyond the stain to the human being behind it.